When people talk about the so-called video nasties of the 1980s, it's usually the same few titles that get all the attention: Cannibal Holocaust, The Evil Dead, Driller Killer, I Spit on Your Grave. But one film that often gets unfairly overlooked is Anthropophagus from 1980. And that's a shame, because not only is it one of the most unsettling and mean-spirited horror films of its era, but it also stands as one of the finest examples of Euro horror nasties. Directed by Joe D'Amato, this film tells the story of a group of tourists who make the increasingly unwise decision to visit an island inhabited by a deformed, flesh-hungry madman. What follows is a slow, creeping descent into terror as the group is stalked and picked off one by one by a cannibal man, culminating in some of the most notorious scenes in the history of horror cinema. And let's be honest here, Anthropophagus wasn't just banned because it was violent. If that were the case, plenty of the other gorier films would have made the infamous nasty list. Nope, the reason this was slapped with the ban had a lot more to do with two particular scenes: the fetus eating sequence and the final gut-chomping climax in which our charming antagonist literally rips his own intestines out and has himself a quick snack. It's a kind of grotesque scene that burrows deep into your brain and refuses to leave, which is probably why the British Board of Film Classification, the BBFC, lost their minds over it and declared it one of the most depraved films ever made. Of course, by modern standards, it's almost quaint compared to the kind of brutality you'll see in mainstream horror today, but back in the early 80s, this was about as extreme as it got. But what really makes this film stand out from the rest of the so-called video nasties isn't just the controversy, it's the atmosphere. While many of its fellow nasties leaned into the cheap thrills, excessive gore, and the shock value, this film takes its time, soaking every scene in an eerie, dreamlike sense of dread. The near-abandoned island setting, with its decayed buildings and empty streets, gives the whole thing an almost apocalyptic feel, as if civilization itself had just quietly given up and left these poor fools to their doom. And then there's George Eastman's performance as the film's monstrous antagonist. Less of a mindless slasher villain and more of a broken, feral creature driven by some primal, insatiable hunger. He doesn't just kill because the script tells him to, he kills because it's the only thing left keeping him alive. There's something disturbingly tragic about that, which makes him way more compelling than your average mass slasher icon. Now, is Anthropophagus a masterpiece of cinema? Absolutely not. The pacing is uneven, the acting is spotty at best, and the budget is clearly whatever loose change D'Amato found lying around his house. But that's part of its charm. It's a film that feels dangerous, unpredictable, and unapologetically grotesque in a way that modern horror just doesn't anymore. In an era where everything is either a sanitized PG-13 ghost story or a self-aware meta-horror flick that's too busy winking at the audience to actually scare them, this film stands as a relic of a time when horror was raw, nasty, and genuinely transgressive. It may not be the most polished film on the video nasty list, but it's certainly one of the most effective, and it deserves way more recognition than it gets. The film is infamous for its extreme content, which led to it being banned in several countries. However, it eventually received uncut releases due to various reasons. Over time, censorship standards can change. What was once considered too extreme may become more acceptable within the context of evolving social norms. Films like Anthropophagus often gained a cult following, prompting distributors to cater to niche markets interested in extreme or controversial cinema. This demand can drive efforts to release films in their original uncut form. With the rise of home video and later streaming platforms, films that were previously banned or heavily edited for theatrical release could find distribution through these channels. This allowed audiences to access uncut versions more easily. Overall, the path to an uncut release for banned films like Anthropophagus involved a combination of changing censorship attitudes, niche market appeal, and the evolving landscape of film distribution. For an era where we're offended by everything, we certainly aren't shy in releasing the most gruesome movies of yesteryear in their full uncut glory. You'll love to see that.
Meeting adjourned.
I'll be right back.
What are you waiting for, huh?
Coming to get you, Barbara.
Ever played in the cat?
Someone's in the back seat!